It is easier to refine and elevate the sparks, which is our mission in this world. Our purpose in this world is to elevate and return the sparks of godliness that are throughout the world. The Hiniyadua, it's known, when the Jewish people resided in the Holy Land in Eretz Yisrael, Bisman Beis Hamikdash came in the time when the Beis Hamikdash stood, Befrat Bisman Shloim Menuch, especially the times of Shloim HaMelech, that he was a man of rest, meaning a man of peace. He wasn't like David HaMelech that fought wars. He did not have to fight any wars. So how did the refinement of sparks take place? He didn't go conquering wars. He didn't go dealing with people all over the world. Where was his and the Yidden in that time? How did they accomplish the mission of elevating and refining the sparks? The way the sparks were refined throughout the rest of the world, outside of Eretz Yisrael, was in such a way that the sparks became elevated like sparks are drawn from a candle flame is drawn to a big torch. Because then the spirituality that's shown in Eretz Yisrael is analogous to a great torch, a powerful flame, and therefore it drew the sparks from the whole world to it. So it's therefore automatically the sparks became subsumed in it. And this is the idea that the Queen of Sheba brought the gifts to Shlomo HaMelech, and other countries brought their gifts and they came visiting Eretz Yisrael. All of this was that the holiness and the great torch in Eretz Yisrael, the great flame of godliness in Eretz Yisrael, attracted the sparks to come to Eretz Yisrael. The Chassidus explains, if the torch would have been small, so then a candle that's close to the torch would become subsumed in it. If that candle would be distant a little bit, will not become subsumed in the torch, because the torch and the flame is very small. But if the torch and flame are great and big, even if the candle is distant, it'll become part of it. So that was in the times of Shlomo, when the flame was very powerful in Eretz Yisrael, in the times of the Beis Hamikdash. Concerning the refining of the sparks that we need to refine in the present day and age, we find that even in the times of Shlomo HaMelech, those sparks that we are only coming in contact with now would not have been able to become elevated and refined in the times of Shlomo HaMelech in a way of rest. That the Yidden were settled in the land of Eretz Yisrael. And automatically all the sparks are refined like a candle before a torch. So those sparks that we are doing now would not have been able to have come to Shlomo HaMelech, would not have been able to come to Eretz Yisrael. And how much more so that they would not be able to become refined automatically through us. Because we are not similar to the state and situation that Shlomo HaMelech's state and spiritual elevated state was. And we're not comparable at all to the state and situation of those times. Surely we cannot refine the sparks in an automatic way when we would have been settled in Eretz Yisrael. For that reason, there had to be what we said before, the tzedakah that Hashem did. Hashem did with us a matter of compassion and mercy, and He gave us tzedakah so we should be able to accomplish our mission. Since Hashem knew who he's dealing with. Skip the parentheses. He knew he's dealing with poor and impoverished people that need help, that need tzedakah. He needs tzedakah as HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'Yisrael shepizron lebeina umis. So Hashem did a tzedakah that he scattered the Yidden and he spread the Yidden amongst the nations. B'chdei and Nakol Yosel Lavaris call it, so it's just to be much easier to refine all the sparks. That including also the sparks that are found in the opposite, in the side of Klippe, the canal, like we learned, like the Rebbe spoke about earlier in the Farbrengen. We even need to refine the spark that the Alter Rebbe speaks about in the Geras HaKodesh, that there's a godly spark, even in a non-Jew, that is disturbing a Yid from davening. Even that spark we need to refine and elevate. And even that is how far we need to reach to elevate the sparks. That's how low we need to deal with the sparks. This is analogous to a lost object. There's a famous thing, a lost object. It's impossible to search after a lost object and to find it. Zulas only b'makim shenevla, in the place that was lost. There's a famous joke that they say about a person that was standing under a street lamp looking for something that he lost, his keys or whatever. So they asked him, "Why are you looking for your keys over here? Did you lose them here?" No, I didn't lose them here. But he says, "Here, there's light." That's not the way it works. You need to search for something in the place that it's lost. So there's certain godly sparks that are so far lost in darkness that we need to travel to that place to get it. It's impossible to refine the sparks that fell to the place of darkness on the other side, the side of Klippim. Only through Hashem spreading us out amongst the nations. Since the purpose and intention of the goals, which is that he scattered us amongst the nations, for the sake of refining the sparks, Nimtza comes out. The avoida of refining the sparks, it's a preparation for Mashiach's coming. Right? They call nitzut v'nitzut shmevarim, through every single spark that we refine and elevate. Mekarvim yoisers bis HaMashiach, we bring the coming of Mashiach even closer. As it's known, she'avoida the birur hanitzoitzes hu inyan kibbutz golus beruchnius. The avoida of collecting the sparks, that's the spiritual component of the ingathering of the exiles. So the Rebbe explains, there's physical ingathering of the exiles, which means the Jewish people will gather from all over the world to Eretz Yisrael, and there's the spiritual ingathering of the exile. He says, Kibbutz Golius Begashmius Eina Avoida Shalanu. Gathering the exiles in the physical, that's not our avoida. We don't have to make a whole mission of sending Yidden to move to live in Eretz Yisrael. That's not what we have to do. We don't have to gather the Golos Begashmis. We don't have to make sure that Yidden move to Eretz Yisrael. Because that is Mashiach's job. Rambam, like the Rambam wrote, Yamid Melechulu, when a king will arise. He's learning in Torah. And he'll fight the wars of Hashem. And you will collect the scattered amongst the Yidden. The Einzem in Yaneinu Lachrik Mashiach Avoida. Einspar Mashiach and Arbit. It's not our job to save Mashiach work. In other words, we're going to say, since Mashiach needs to gather in all the exiles, we'll help him out and we'll make a movement of getting Yidden to go to Eretz Yisrael. Mashiach doesn't need our help. It's not only that, this is not even in our capability to bring all the Yidden to Eretz Yisrael. Even if someone thinks that this is something that he does have in his capability to do, he has to know that's not his work, that's not his job. But rather, this is the avoid of Mashiach. Since from above, Hashem does not give a person powers and capabilities for no purpose. If you were given the capabilities for a purpose, so therefore, a person needs to use his powers for the sake of the work that's placed upon him. What is the work that he has to do? And the kibbutz golis beruchni is the spiritual ingathering of the exiles. And then when we do the spiritual ingathering of the exiles, which means collecting all the sparks that we are able to collect, so then we are making the preparation. That's also the preparation for gathering in the exiles in the physical. In other words, if you really want to bring all the Yidden back to Eretz Yisrael, first, the way to do so is by elevating all the sparks that you can elevate. Therefore, one has to prepare themselves for the coming of Mashiach. Avoid refining the sparks. This means to use every matter, even a matter has to do with the opposite of Kedusha, for the sake of holiness, for the sake of Kedusha, like we'll soon explain. Now the Rebbe says, again, this was in Tafshin Yud Gimel, 1953. So there are those that are asking questions on the fact that constantly we're talking about that we have to get ready for Mashiach. And the question is, what of them is Mashiach? It says three things come without our paying attention to them. And one of them is Mashiach. Therefore, they're worried. Since they are very stringent in their observance of Torah mitzvahs, therefore they are very strict about this idea of their mind being removed from anything having to do with Mashiach. They think it's prohibited to think about Mashiach at all. Because the thought about Mashiach and preparing for his coming, these people say, it's heaven forbid, delays the coming of Mashiach. And by the way, in 1953, I do not believe that anyone else mentioned the word Mashiach ever in public, definitely not in a big fashion. These days, it's become regular part of speech that everybody and every Rav and every Gadol and every Yeshiva talks about the coming of Mashiach. He should come by Meir Yameinu and so on and so forth. But in 1953, the Rebbe was literally a lone voice about this. And he was saying that don't think that this will chas v'shalom delay the coming of Mashiach, but rather Rachainin, who the idea behind this is, Mashiach ba'b'hes chadas. What does it mean the Mashiach comes? When the mind is removed from it, pirush she'achana lebias HaMashiach ya'idei avoidam she'ba'ofen shel hes chadas. The preparation for the coming of Mashiach is doing such a service that's beyond knowledge, in a way of removing one's mind. Our mind limits what we could do. By doing things in such a way where we do not limit ourselves by our mind, that is the type of avodah that brings Mashiach. That's the idea of birur on its that even refining sparks, even in things that are the opposite of Kedusha, earlier in the Farbrengen, the Rebbe spoke about the idea of Hesach Hadas, and he compares it to the idea of Nesiya, of traveling, that we find in an expression in Yerushalmi, where the Gemara Bavli used the term Hesach Hadas. Yerushalmi used the word Isiyad Daitoi. He travels it. So it means that he's taking a trip. He's taking his mind away from it. What does that mean? Because it's uprooting his thought to something that's the opposite. So that's what it means, Haskadas, that he doesn't focus on what logic says, and he's refining even those things that seem to be completely out of the realm of anything having to do with Kedusha. Skip the parentheses. That's also what it means the Mashiach will come with Hes Chadas. Hainu Aidei Ha'avoida B'Birur Anitzotziz Gam B'Dvarim Havchim. It's through the avoida of refining the sparks, even in things that are opposite from Kedusha. Or Pratis Yosef, more specifically, Klolos Ha'avoida the Birur Dvarim Gash, the general avoida of refining physical matters. Shehem Begether in Yonim Havchim. The physicality fall into the category of things that are the opposite of Kedusha. Even refining those matters of the opposite side that are totally the opposite of Kedusha. I know this means that refining the sparks that were lost in the opposite in Klip. Kanal, like we learned earlier. That the idea of refining sparks is like finding something, finding a lost object that you need to search for it in the place that it was lost, which is B'midbar Hagadol V'Anoira Nachash Sara V'Akrov, in the great and terrible wilderness, a place of snakes and poisonous, venomous snakes and scorpions, etc. And let's skip over a few lines. We'll do the second line in the next paragraph. V'hainu shebiyas haMashiach yaidei avoda ba'ofen shel hes chadas. The coming of Mashiach is doing avoda in a way of removing one's own calculations. To inyan birur anitzotziz shebedvarim havchim. It's the idea of refining the sparks of things that are the opposite and things that are in the realm of the opposite of Kedusha. In Yoni L'Umma Zeshmenagdim L'Kedusha, matters of the opposite that oppose Kedusha, K'moy Akrov, like for example, a poisonous scorpion should be Rudam Hukamashla Mitzia, that refining them is analogous to finding a lost object. Now let's go back to the part that we skipped. I wanted to keep the thought in place. So we're going to go back to this the middle of the line that starts by Midbar Hagadol V'Anoira with the words Kiyadua, as it's known, She'akrav Inyane Kridus. Siddur brings down that there's a concept of the difference between snake's venom and the venom of a scorpion, even though both of them are poisonous, but the idea of a snake is the idea of hot and a heated venom, and brings heat to the body, and the scorpion's venom is the idea of coldness and brings coldness to the person. And the Rebbe says that this idea of the coldness of the scorpion, of the akrov, who are bilbul hayoser gadol avodas hatfilah, coldness, ambivalence, indifference. That's the greatest disturbance to the service of davening. We know the whole idea of the service of davening is about awakening and inspiring a passion for Hashem, a heat and a desire and yearning and love for Hashem. But coldness, ambivalence, that's the total opposite. There's an interesting halacha. I'm not going to go into the details of it, but in middle of Shemoneh Esrei, we know we're not allowed to interrupt for anything. But it says, if there is a snake that is encircling his heel, so then he doesn't stop in middle of Shemoneh Esrei for it. Again, obviously, we're not talking about a danger to life, but if it's a scorpion by his heel, so then he stops. So the spiritual idea behind it is that a scorpion, being that it indicates the idea of coldness, ambivalence, indifference, that is the total polar opposite of davening. And that's what he's saying over here, that the refinement is even in the desert, even in a wilderness, a total opposite place of Kedusha, where there's an akra, where there's something that's cold and ambivalent, it needs to be refined. Now, the Rebbe is going to, in the next paragraph, the part that we skipped, the Rebbe is going to bring an interesting thing. It says that three things come behes chadas. We said this earlier, and we just brought up Mashiach. What's the other two? So one of them is a lost object. In other words, finding someone else's lost object. That is called, that comes behes chadas. A person doesn't go around looking for lost objects. All of a sudden, he walks in the street. He sees, look what I found over here in the street. Or it says also an akrab, a scorpion is not something you look for, like it finds you. It also comes behes chadas. So the Rebbe is going to connect that with this idea, with the spiritual idea. Yom Tov Yosef, this will become even more flavored and gishmak. Shagam mitzia va'akrab. Also, a finding making a find, discovering something that you didn't see there before. And the scorpion, it's those things that come with our mind when our mind is not paying attention. The Gemara says 3 things come when our mind is not focused on it. Mashiach, Metzia, Va'akrav, Mashiach, and someone's lost object, and a scorpion. That means the coming of Mashiach in such a way of removing one's mind, just like the akrab is like so far away from a person's spiritual state, and just like finding a lost object is a very distant thing from where his mind is at. The same thing, Mashiach has to come from a place where he doesn't even imagine that he's going to be able to elevate the sparks of it. The general service, refining the sparks in the time of exile. It causes a great delight above. So in other words, every moment that we are in Golus, and every spark that I elevate causes an amazing delight for Hashem, an amazing enjoyment for Hashem. Yet, despite how great that enjoyment is now, with every spark that we elevate, the main delight is at the conclusion of the refining of the sparks. As much as Hashem enjoys every single spark that we elevate, still in all, at the end of the elevation of all the sparks, that's the true delight of Hashem. As it's known, the real delight in everything is at the conclusion of the matter. For example, it says that Hashem, at the end of creation, once he finished the 6 days of creation, he delighted in the creation on Shabbos. And that's why Shabbos is a time when we are supposed to have delight as well, because that was what Hashem's delight was there. So even though Hashem delighted in every step of creation, so this explains, when he created light, he delighted. When he created the heavens and the earth, he had delight. But the true delight came when he stepped back at the end of creation and saw the whole creation. So that was the true delight. And that's why Shabbos is a time of delight, because it's a time of delight for Hashem. And we need to reflect that down here. So the same thing, though Hashem delights in every single spark that becomes elevated, the same thing, the true delight is at the conclusion of the elevation of the sparks. When all Jewish souls will refine their part of the world. It will be the conclusion of all the refining of sparks. I'm sorry, I went back. The year Gemara Berun will be the refining of sparks with Tushlam Hakavona, the Soiser, flawless in and agolos of Nas Livnois. It'll be fulfilled the intention that he destroyed, which is the general idea of Golus, is to destroy for the sake of building. There's a halacha that says that a person is not liable for a korban on Shabbos or any other punishment if he destroys something for the sake of destruction. Only if he's destroying something for the sake of building something better or nicer, that's when the destruction itself is part of the building process, and therefore a person is doing something constructive and he's liable for that. The same thing that Rebbe always explains, that when the reason why Hashem was allowed to destroy the Beis HaMikdash, we know that it's a prohibition even to destroy a tiny part of the Beis Hamikdash. And we know that Hashem observes the Torah that He gave us. Mashu Oisa Imeli Yisrael Lasis Magid Dvarav Liyakim Pukav Mishpatav Yisrael. So how could the Eibusher destroy the Beis Hamikdash if you're not allowed to destroy any part of the Beis Hamikdash? Therefore, it applies to the Eibusher himself. But Hashem's destruction of the Beis Hamikdash it's the destruction for the sake of construction, and then it's permitted. And this was true in the Beis Hamikdash itself. If they had to fix something up, and to do so, they had to take out a stone or take down a wall. They were allowed to do it because it wasn't destruction; it was part of the construction. So the Rebbe says, at the moment that we're now in Golus, all that we see is the destruction. But when Mashiach comes, when all the sparks will be refined, so then it will become revealed the intention that the destruction was about construction. Then and then it will be the true delight above, and then it will be the revelation of Mashiach. We can also give the example of Hashem's delight from our delight when we're building something. Let's say if you're remodeling your house. So some people will, even while the house is a complete wreck, just by the very fact that they know that this wreck is not there for its own sake, but they know that this wreck of a house is going to turn into something beautiful, better than was there before. So they're enjoying even the wrecking of the house now. But that doesn't come, it's not at all comparable to the enjoyment and pleasure that they're going to have when the house is actually complete. Same thing, even though the Eibusher enjoys the sparks, and every spark is being elevated now, but when will it be the main delight above? The main delight will be when all the sparks will be concluded. That will be the time of the revelation of Mashiach. Last paragraph, Aval Afal became. Even though we said that there needs to be all the sparks elevated, but I don't have to go ahead and look at someone else's sparks and saying, but he didn't elevate the sparks, she didn't elevate the sparks, they didn't elevate the sparks. No. Aval Afal became still in all that Rebbe says in the last paragraph. Gam kol echad miYisrael. So even every single Yid, afilu yachid, even an individual, one single Yid, Kasher Yaseh Kol Avidos, when he does his entire work, V'yigmer Kol Abirurim Shaloi, and he concludes all of his sparks that he has to refine, Yachol Love V'litin LaKadosh Baruch Hu, he can come and complain to Hashem. Haloi Pasakta B'Torah Secha Shekala Olam Shakl. You ruled in your Torah that the entire world is supposed to be looked at as an even scale. And the Rebbe always brings it. It's a Gemara, it's a Rambam. And you brought down the Torah that every single person has the capability to tilt the scale for the entire world. If so, through my avodah, I tilted the scales in favor of Mashiach's coming of the entire world. Lekafschus, for the side of merit. And therefore, I need to have the coming of my individual Mashiach. That's the Mashiach within me that the Rebbe always talks about. By days, and through this, and through this will come the general Mashiach speedily in our days. So every Yid can demand and say, I did my part, now you, the Eibush, have to do your part. And the Rebbe concluded with telling them to sing the nigun of Ani Mamin. Okay, we'll stop over here.